Welcome to my series of basketball videos where I'll be comparing various NBA greats against each other. I'm doing this because I find that a lot of the basketball videos comparing players on YouTube are too focused on the big names and sometimes compare players from different positions. Lots of people compare Jordan to LeBron and Kobe to Duncan, for example, due to their similar levels of achievements, but since those players play different positions and have different styles of play, it's not an interesting comparison. In this series, I want to do comparisons between not just more well-known players, but players from days past, in the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, and the ABA as well, that most modern fans probably do not have too much knowledge about. Also, as much as possible, I want to compare players that play similar positions and/or similar play styles. To me, that's a more interesting and fruitful comparison. I'll be using 8 different metrics to judge each player. Scoring. This category will be defined by each player's career points per game, peak points per game, both regular season and playoffs, and number of scoring titles. Rebounding. This category will be defined by each player's career rebounds per game, peak rebounds per game, both regular season and playoffs, and number of rebounding titles. Passing. This category will be defined by each player's career assists per game, peak assists per game, both in regular season and playoffs, and number of assist titles. Efficiency advanced metrics. This category will be defined by each player's career true shooting percentage, PER, and win shares per 48. Reason I use true shooting percentage is because it's more fair to guards. Defense. This category will be defined by each player's all defensive selections, defensive win shares, and defensive player of the year awards. The reason I'm not using blocks, steals, or defensive box plus minus is because I want to compare the achievements of older players that modern fans might not have too much knowledge about, and players in the 1960s and early 1970s do not have these stats tracked. Awards. This category will be defined by all-star appearances, all-NBA selections, MVPs, finals MVPs, and championships as a top 3 player. The reason I have to count championships as a top 3 player on the team is because otherwise you'll get into the situation where, for example, Robert Horry has 7 rings and Karl Malone has 0, and it's not representative of how much better a player is if you weren't a top 3 player on that team contributing to a championship. Also, I'll be including ABA stats and awards and using them equivalent to their respective ABA stats and awards. Also, no All-NBA third team selections are included because All-NBA third teams weren't added until the late 1980s, which is unfair to older players. Playoffs. This category will be defined by how many Eastern Conference Finals or Western Conference Finals and Finals a player has been to, and how many championships they won as a top 3 player on the team. Yes, this is supplementary to the awards category because it also rewards players for making it far in the playoffs, even if they don't necessarily win at all. Totals. This category will be defined by longevity, how many total points, rebounds, assists, and win shares a player has accumulated throughout their career, and rewards a player's durability. After all, a lot of people say the best ability is availability. And of course, this is only going to be my opinion from comparing the available metrics, since I've not watched most of these players live or even been born when some of these players have been playing. And to keep it fair, I'm judging them based on how they did in their own era. There's no comparing what this NBA player played in today's era or the 1960s, none of that. It'll be strictly based on their stats and accomplishments within their own era against that era's competition, which makes the most sense to me. So I hope you guys enjoy this comparison video and hopefully learn something new from it. In the 43rd episode of the series, we take a look at 2 all-time defensive power forwards who played a major role in their team's success. Both players were known for their hustle, unselfish play, and anchoring their team's defense to win championships. Draymond Green is not your typical power forward. He was the do-everything glue guy for the Golden State Warriors dynasty, their best defender, the most vocal player on the team, arguably the best playmaker, and the undersized big man. And along with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, helping lead the Warriors to 4 championships in 8 years. Bobby Jones was similarly also a glue guy for the 2 teams he played for, the 1970s Denver Nuggets and the 1980s Philadelphia 76ers. Although not as vocal as Draymond, he was his team's main defensive stalwart and hustle player, earning himself the nickname the Secretary of Defense, and along with Dr. J and Moses Malone, helping lead the 76ers to a title. But who is greater all time? Let's find out. In the scoring category, neither player was known for their scoring, and weren't the first or second scoring options for their team. They were known more as complementary scoring pieces that can help their team out if they really needed it. Draymond averaged 8.7 points per game for his career, peaking at 14 points per game in 2016, and in the playoffs upped it to 11.6 points per game, peaking at 15.4 points per game also in 2016. Bobby Jones averaged 12.1 points per game for his career, peaking at 15.1 points per game in 1977, and 11.9 points per game in the playoffs, peaking at 14.7 points per game in 1981. Although neither player were good scorers, Bobby had the higher numbers on paper. I do think that Draymond at his peak can actually match Bobby's scoring when his team really needed it. Draymond is famous for averaging a triple-single, but part of the reason he doesn't score as much is simply because the Warriors had 2 all-time shooters with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, and at one point 3 all-time shooters, adding Kevin Durant as well. In those situations, I do think Draymond's scoring takes a back seat because his team really didn't need him to score that much. That said, Bobby Jones averages less minutes per game played and yet still has higher scoring average than Draymond. So I do think that Bobby Jones is a more reliable scorer than Draymond is, even if Draymond was an underrated scorer at his peak. So I would say that this category ultimately does still go to Bobby Jones, but it's really close. In the rebounding category, it's a pretty close one as both players were quite solid rebounders. Draymond averaged 7 rebounds per game for his career, peaking at 9.5 per game in 2016, and 8.9 rebounds per game in the playoffs, peaking at 10.6 rebounds per game in 2018. Bobby Jones averaged 6.1 rebounds per game for his career, peaking at 9.5 rebounds per game in 1976, and 5.5 rebounds per game in the playoffs, peaking at 8.6 boards a game in 1976 as well. I think that this is the one stat category where both Draymond and Bobby are dead even because both players are known for their hustle and rebounding. Draymond might average a bit more at his peak, but we have to keep in mind Bobby played more playoff games when he was at the end of his career. So overall, I do think that this category is too close to call, so I have to call it a tie. In the passing category, this one is not very close at all, as Draymond is an all-time passing big man, and his numbers look closer to that of a point guard's. He averages 5.6 assists per game for his career, peaking at 8.9 assists per game in 2021, and raising it to 6.2 assists per game in the playoffs, peaking at 8.5 assists per game in 2019. Bobby has more traditional numbers, averaging 2.7 assists per game for his career, peaking at 4 assists per game in 1976, and 2.5 assists per game in the playoffs, also peaking at 4.5 assists per game in 1976. Draymond is arguably the best passer on his team despite not being the point guard, and Draymond acts as the main pivot point, kicking the ball back out to either Curry or Klay for a 3. And he's also one of the best passing power forwards ever, up there with Giannis, Chris Webber, George McGinnis, Charles Barkley, Blake Griffin, and Kevin Garnett. So this category easily goes to Draymond. In the efficiency and advanced metrics category, this one easily goes to Bobby Jones, as Draymond is not known to be an efficient scorer, and is known for taking too many bad outside shots sometimes, and this really hurts his advanced metrics a lot. Meanwhile, Bobby plays more like a traditional power forward closer to the basket, doesn't take many bad shots, and is overall quite efficient. So this category easily goes to Bobby Jones. In the defense category, this is what both players are mostly known for, is their hustle and defensive tenacity. Both players are renowned for being arguably the best defenders of their era. Draymond was a Swiss Army knife, being able to defend any position from the inside or outside, kind of like a 2010s version of Dennis Rodman. And Bobby Jones is well known as being one of the fiercest rim protectors of the 1970s. While Draymond does have a Defensive Player of the Year, this award didn't exist during Bobby Jones' prime, so we can't dock him for that. It's also worth noting that Bobby Jones has the 5th most total all-defensive selections of all time with 11, behind only Tim Duncan, Kobe Bryant, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Kevin Garnett. But overall, I would say this category is just too close to call, as these two players are easily both all-time defenders. In the awards category, Bobby has one more All-Star selection. They both have one All-NBA or All-ABA selection, but the award that basically separates them is the number of championships. Bobby's sole championship with the 76ers came when he was a sixth man coming off the bench. And not only does Draymond have 3 more championships than Bobby, but he was also one of the top 3 players for 3 out of those 4 championships. Draymond I would also consider to be one of the top 2 players on the Warriors for their 2016 finals as well, which they infamously came so close to winning. So thus this category will go to Draymond. In the playoffs category, both players had considerable playoff success. What's interesting about Curry's Warriors dynasty is that they never lost in a conference finals. Whenever they went to a conference finals, they always won and went to the finals, giving Draymond 6 finals appearances and no season where he stopped at a conference finals. Bobby Jones, meanwhile, went to a total of 4 conference finals and 4 finals. He had a finals appearance both in the ABA with the Denver Nuggets, where they lost to Dr. J's Nets in the finals, and also, ironically, ended up with Dr. J as a teammate on the Philadelphia 76ers, where he reached an additional 3 NBA finals together. Overall, I do think they are pretty close. Draymond went to 2 more finals, but Bobby's 4 additional conference finals appearances are nothing to sneeze at either, so I have to call this category a tie. Both of these players were consistent winners throughout their careers. In the longevity category, neither player has any totals that would put them high on an all-time ranking, but Bobby does have a considerable advantage in total points and win shares, even if Draymond does have the advantage in assists, so I'll have to give this one to Bobby Jones. So when all the categories are summed up, Bobby Jones takes the scoring, efficiency, and totals categories, while Draymond Green takes the passing and awards categories, with the rest being a tie, giving Bobby Jones the win. Draymond Green is known as one of the most versatile yet controversial players in the modern NBA. Although not a great scorer, his all-around versatility, defensive ability, and playmaking abilities make him the glue that holds the Warriors team together. A perfect complement to his high-scoring teammates Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, leading to a dynasty with 6 NBA Finals appearances and 4 championships. Yet he is also known for being too outspoken and has a reputation for being a dirty player. Bobby Jones is also an all-time great defender and a great teammate who, like Draymond, puts winning above his statistical production. He was known for being one of the greatest 6 men in NBA history, helping lead Dr. J and Moses Malone's 76ers to a title coming off the bench. Unlike Draymond, he was known for being tough but quiet, and his style of play was not flashy, just focusing on the fundamentals, similar to Tim Duncan. This unassuming personality and not caring about his stats or showing off is one reason Bobby Jones has been one of the most underrated players in NBA history. Hope you guys enjoyed this comparison. Hope you guys learned something new. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned for the next comparison video.